Class is now in session. I'm Professor Hockey, and today we'll be discussing some very exciting news, and that is that the San Jose Sharks have called up defenseman Luca Cagnoni from the San Jose Barracuda. Now, I had actually filmed a video earlier today discussing, amongst other things, why I thought the Sharks should call up Kagnoni, but with this news that has now been made irrelevant and has been scrapped. But it is absolutely worth it to see this plan get put into motion. This is a player who is very deserving of this opportunity, and Kagnoni has been underestimated at pretty much every turn, not just this season, not just since he's been drafted, but even in the years leading up to that 2023 draft year, for one very simple reason, which is that he is an undersized defenseman standing at just 5'9", a factor that is continuously overlooked, no pun intended, by NHL general managers and amateur scouts alike. It is the very reason for why, in 2022, Lane Hutson was a late second-round pick of the Montreal Canadiens. Despite having all the talent in the world, people could not get past the fact that he was just 5'9", and now 3 years later, he is a likely Calder finalist. Not to say the same thing will happen with Kagnoni, but the idea is similar. If he had been 6'1", 6'2", he is likely drafted much earlier than where the Sharks ended up getting him, which was in the 4th round. But other teams' losses is the Sharks' gain. Kagnoni has been nothing less than remarkable since being drafted. In his D+1 year in the WHL, he hit the 90-point mark. In fact, the first defenseman to reach 90 points in about 30 years in that particular junior league. A huge achievement for himself. And then this offseason, many people, including myself, thought he would be heading back to juniors, that he was not fully ready to make his professional debut. And yet, Kagnoni had something to say about that. He came into the rookie faceoff tournament being potentially to be overshadowed by bigger names like Celebrini, Smith, Musty, Dickinson, and yet he had put up potentially the best performance of all of them through that 3-game stretch. He transitioned it then into a preseason that was remarkably solid, so much so that you could not possibly justify sending him back to juniors. He was to make his professional debut. But again, people felt as though he wouldn't be able to make a huge impact as a 19-year-old, soon-to-be 20-year-old in the AHL, that smaller player in a man's league. How much could he really do? He'd probably be in and out of the lineup. Well, Kagnoni has surpassed expectations yet again. 47 points in 56 games. That would already be impressive for any AHL defenseman, never mind an actual rookie defenseman coming in as a teenager. Incredible numbers. Now, it should be noted that Kagnoni is a little bit of a power play merchant. Of his 47 points, 31 of them have come with the man advantage, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. The bad thing is, since the game is majority played at 5-on-5 at even strength, you'd like to see a player be able to produce in that area, but still, having that many power play points cannot possibly be a bad thing. He has helped lead the Barracuda to having the best power play in the entire AHL. So he has still been very, very impressive, on pace for easily eclipsing the 50-point mark here in his rookie season. And to me, that is very deserving of at least a chance to play a few NHL games. And what this also does is send the message to the other young players throughout the organization that even if it is not necessarily their time to make an NHL sort of full-time debut, that if they play well enough, they can get the chance to get some NHL games. On top of that, however, this is a very smart move simply just for Luca Cagnoni's development. Even if he doesn't stick around, even if he's only here for a few games and then he gets sent back down, it will be a huge learning experience. I go back to something that the Sharks did this past season with rookie forward Colin Graf. It's a little bit different because Graf was a college free agent. He had the opportunity to sign with a bunch of different teams, but he ultimately decided on the Sharks for a multitude of reasons, but one of them being that he could have immediate path to the NHL, and indeed the Sharks let him make his debut right out of the gate, and he was very clearly not ready for this. The jump from the college level to the NHL level was too significant, and Graf did not make much of any impact in that handful of games. But it was still very valuable for him because he was able to understand the type of competitiveness, the type of skill level, the speed that would be necessary to actually hack it at that NHL level. And so going into a multi-month offseason, he could get to work to honing his talents, to honing his skills, to come back even stronger next year. And that is exactly what he has done. He was incredibly impressive to start off with the San Jose Barracuda at the beginning of the season, eventually earning himself a call-up to the Sharks. And while the first call-up wasn't great, a couple of weeks later, his second call-up was much more impressive. He has become a reliable two-way player at the NHL level that Warsofsky clearly trusts immensely. He's even started to contribute offensively. I doubt we will see Graf back with the Barracuda this season. Maybe if they make the playoffs, he will be sent back down for that. And I imagine he also has a lineup spot written up for him next year, as long as things go decently well in next year's preseason. The same can occur with Kagnoni. Giving him this stretch of games here in the NHL will send him that type of wake-up call and show him what he needs to be able to do to have success at this top level. It's one thing to just watch tape of the NHL. It's another thing to actually experience it firsthand. So just from an offensive perspective, he'll see just how fast those shooting lanes close down. He has to be smarter with his shot selection if he actually wants to get pucks through and not just completely turn them over from getting blocked. Those passing lanes, especially on the power play, will also close down quickly. How fast he needs to be able to move the puck is going to be very important. From a defensive standpoint, he will see the speed that he will be faced on every single night at that top level, how quick he needs to be with his stick to actually break up these plays. Even if he struggles, even if there are moments in which he is making mistakes and this leads to goals against, it is all going to be worth it to get him to that level of being a consistent NHL defenseman. He will be able to go into this multi-month offseason and work on the specific assets of his game that he needs to improve to get to that point of being that NHL defenseman. So despite any possible downturn in terms of play that we might see in the NHL, it is all going to be worth it in the end. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier on, we have seen Kagnoni time and time again exceed everybody's expectations. So who knows, maybe he can surprise us at the NHL and actually stick at that level. Now, one of the major sort of points for why it seems as though Mike Grier has been somewhat hesitant to actually make call-ups from the Barracuda to the NHL since that trade deadline, outside of a Stapchuk, who was kind of an exception to the rule because of the Zetterlund trade, one of the reasons was that he didn't want to make the Barracuda any worse than they currently are, because they've kind of been struggling, and while they do still find themselves in a playoff spot, it's a relatively precarious situation. But the good news here about this Kagnoni call-up is this isn't necessarily going to be making the Barracuda significantly worse, because the player who he will be replacing in the Sharks lineup is Barracuda captain Jimmy Schuldt. Now, obviously, the Barracuda power play is going to take a massive hit. Schuldt himself is not a power play defenseman, but he does bring a solid level of defensive play, and so with that being an area that the Barracuda have been struggling with, they should still end up being in a decent spot. So really, this is a perfect call-up, and he also has a great fit on the Sharks roster currently. First of all, at even strength, he finds himself on a third defensive pairing with Vincent Desharnais, which is honestly like a match made in heaven. Desharnais, that 6'7" beast on the ice, can handle a lot more of the physical jobs. He can be that net front presence that clears guys out, while Kagnoni can be a little bit more of a roamer. He is also there to make sure that nobody takes any sort of liberties against Kagnoni here in his first few NHL games, and he could also be kind of the backbone of this pairing if Kagnoni has some, adventures in the offensive zone. On top of that, the Sharks power play has been kind of looking for a consistent power play quarterback, not even just since the Wallman trade, even before that. Wallman obviously held down that role decently well, but even he was not excelling in that particular position. And then since he's been gone, the Sharks have been forced to run a 5-forward group, which isn't terrible. I think Wenberg has done a solid job, but it's also not optimal either. Getting Kagnoni in there, giving him the chance to run that top power play unit with guys like Celebrini and Smith and Toffoli will be a huge chance to find something to really spark this group, and it also allows you to spread the love a little bit and not have to run Barclay Goodrow on your second power play unit. Thankful for that one. And so this was a great choice, a pretty obvious idea, honestly, the reason why I had made that video earlier today to say that this should happen. Kagnoni getting called up is something that we have all been waiting for. It is a testament to just how good he has been, just how much he has improved throughout this season, and I'm very excited to see what he is able to do. Class dismissed.